Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Brendan with the Leaderboard, and today we're here to check out Digital Extreme's darling Warframe. This is 107 facts about Warframe. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. Warframe is a free-to-play third-person action game with an emphasis on cooperative play. It was developed for PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. Sorry, Nintendo fans. The Warframe Nexus app is available in Google Play for mobile users. It allows players to check inventory for future missions, use blueprints to create or claim items, see new events, and collect extractors. Warframe's story takes place in a dystopia centuries after a technocyte virus was released, which led to the near genocide of humans. Now, the world is controlled by 4 divided factions made up of corrupt clones, humans, monsters, and aliens. Respectively, these camps are the Grineer, the Corpus, the Infested, and the Sentients. Prior to its launch, Warframe was known as Dark Sector. Then, Dark Sector branched off conceptually and became a completely different game. Nonetheless, Digital Extreme Studios never abandoned the initial concept and decided to change the name of the project to disguise its previous rejection from publishers. The first Warframe we are introduced to in the game is Excalibur. He is also the main character from the 2008 video game Dark Sector. In Dark Sector, Special Agent Hayden Tenno contracted the technocyte virus during the Cold War and was the first human able to withstand the force of the Warframe without combusting. In the game, when an item is referred to as Prime, whether it's a weapon, a Warframe accessory, or a Sentinel, it means that it is a purely preserved artifact from the Orokin era. It is a rare and powerful object with superior abilities. In order to find Prime items, players must obtain a Void Key in order to enter the Orokin Void, which is comprised of 2 towers and protected by the Corrupted. Here, the player must collect the Prime parts and blueprints, which they can combine in the foundry of their ship to create Prime items. In 1993, Digital Extreme Studios partnered with Epic Games to create the one-player shooter series Unreal. Unreal sparked their passion project, Warframe, which was an attempt to retain an intense action multiplayer shooter with fully fleshed out characters. Digital Extreme Studios came up with the initial Warframe concept in 2000. Little did they know it would take 13 years of development before it launched in 2013. Even though Warframe launched on March 18th, 2013, it was made available to players as a closed beta a year before it was completely finished. The gameplay was entirely different, and the developers tweaked it until they were satisfied with it. The term Warframe comes from Boeing Aircraft's experimentation with exo armor. Steve Sinclair stumbled upon the term while researching World War II. Sinclair's space ninjas were inspired by Metal Gear Solid, Akira, Cowboy Bebop, and Guyver. In a 2000 interview with Canadian magazine GG8, creative director James Schmaltz described his initial vision for the setting of Warframe as a paranoid universe where all players have a bounty on their heads. Digital Extreme sought to create a multiplayer platform where players could either unite or divide. In this way, users could either co-op an invasion or propose death matches, player versus player. In its early stages, the creators wanted death to have serious repercussions. For instance, if a player died, they'd suffer the consequence of being looted by other players. While Warframe was on hiatus, Digital Extremes did work for hire on other projects like BioShock and Darkness 2. However, they were not content working under other larger companies. While Warframe was not their first independent project, it was their first successful project as an independent company. Warframe's success enabled them to work on future projects without any interference from what Sinclair called, quote, the publisher beast. On a deadline to present their concept to the Game Developers Conference, Digital Extremes had its first prototype model made within a month. Creative director James Schmaltz wanted to reach out to some of the most powerful creators of free-to-play games for publication, but no one offered to financially back the project. Other free-to-play developers warned Digital Extremes that too much of a focus on graphics and not enough focus on updates would lead to their demise. It was thanks to this advice that Warframe is one of the most updated and popular games. The development phase officially started in February 2012. There were only 8 developers at that time, and they called the game Project Lotus. The team eventually grew to more than 170 workers. Unfortunately, since publishers rejected Warframe, Digital Extremes resorted to laying off 48 of its employees. Luckily, with the rise of Warframe, some of those employees were rehired. Sinclair knew that if they wanted to make Warframe, it would have to be on the company's own dime. In fact, the team wanted to make it on their own dime so they wouldn't be beholden to a publisher. They also wanted to be solely responsible for the game's success or failure. When Sinclair first came up with the idea to publish and develop Warframe, he noticed a trend starting to take the gaming world by storm: free-to-play. The only hesitation Sinclair had was actually agreeing to go free-to-play, since he knew the studio only had one shot to win fans over with the core game, and bring in new players with updates. With a free-to-play structure, there is no incentive to use real money to actually be better in the game. Instead, it's a combination of two factors. One, do you want to complete things faster? Two, how cool do you want to look while completing things? Community producer Rebecca Ford felt that from the get-go, the game gave players a lot of options, which led to players deciding how they wanted to spend their time, and not feel limited in how they approached their objectives. After researching players, Ford noticed that players tend to balance both farming with progressing towards objectives. Ford has also checked the stats of the game's ecosystem to ensure that the game's loot felt unfarmable. She noted that if it ever did get to that point, the team would address the issue and do their best to fix it. James Schmaltz, CEO of Digital Extremes, knew it would be a challenge to go free to play. He felt the biggest difference in going free to play was making sure to listen to fans and see how they reacted to updates. He resolved to continue to build on the game based on their reactions and feedback. Dennis Cawson, the lead character artist, admitted that the free-to-play structure meant the studio had to adjust their development cycle. Normally, they would release a game and that was that. But with Warframe, the team creates a character, develops them, and releases them into the wild. Then, after feedback, makes adjustments and fixes. Technical animator Bob Piscopop noted that he embraced this cycle because something he worked on at the beginning of a week could be rolled out by the end of the week. He would check out the forums and embrace the feedback on the team's work, be it positive or negative. Because Warframe was a surprise hit, Digital Extremes was able to turn down projects from other studios. They wanted to focus on bringing Warframe to consoles before they tried anything else. Rebecca Ford felt that Warframe was a sleeper hit with the community. While it consistently made the top played games in Steam, she felt the game itself had under-the-radar success overall. When Warframe launched in 2013, it had over 3 million players signed up, and that was before the PS4 launch. Sinclair felt that with the launch of Warframe on PlayStation 4, it was one of the first times that players on consoles fully embraced the free-to-play model. He knew games were expensive, and that Warframe could be something entirely new for console players in that they wouldn't have to spend a dime to get access to it. Before the studio agreed to launch Warframe on PS4, they asked Sony to agree to a few things. They had to self-publish the game, Sony had to support the free-to-play model, and they needed to release updates as frequently as possible. In fact, Sony approached them about bringing Warframe to PS4 and promised them full creative control. The only thing Sony had to do was pass the patches and updates through certification. When it came time to actually develop Warframe for the PS4, Sinclair noted that it was a painless process. The only real hurdle the team had was making sure to lock it at 1080p and have it run at 60 FPS. Warframe was meant to be a single-player game at first. The idea to make it an MMO-like game with co-op came out of its story. The development team believed that the best stories are the stories about players themselves and how they work together. A lot of the story elements, mainly in the Warframes themselves, used to rely on codex entries within the game. The team noticed that a lot of players never read the codex entries, so the developers decided to make cinematic trailers for all Prime Warframes. Octavia's Anthem was one of the first quests to feel more cinematic. The developers loved making it, but noted it took a lot of effort to complete. But ultimately, that's the direction they wanted to go in for Warframe and its quests. Warframe's audio director George Spanos said that Warframe's Octavia's character and gameplay is heavily reliant on music. He said, quote, "Octavia is to be a unique Warframe that's able to play songs that the player creates." He claims that the biggest challenge was avoiding dissonance with other players in order to allow them to, quote, "jam with each other." Warframe's story was established on two main storylines, the Warframes and the Tenno. The Tenno storyline was meant to feel more fleshed out, while the Warframe story was meant to be more cryptic. Warframe takes the player all across the solar system. The types of missions depend on the planet, with goals ranging from survival and capture to sabotage and so on. The Eidolons are massive monsters inspired by kaiju giants in Japanese anime. Rebecca Ford says that developers were also influenced by the kaiju found in Guillermo del Toro's film Pacific Rim. The Corpus ship tile set was the first and only layout available in October 2012. Now the game offers procedurally generated landscapes. Players can build clans made up of large teams of players. Together they can build obstacle courses, collect items, compete in special events, and become part of the clan leaderboards. PC clans cannot be part of the console clans. Steve Sinclair plans to expand the dojo obstacle course so that players can customize it the way they want. Players will be able to place hazards, start and stop triggers, timing gates, target dummies, and other additions to add to the dojo obstacle course. Currently, Digital Extremes is experimenting with sandbox gameplay that enables players to explore their own side missions, and compensates for the lack of updates for raid missions. While trials are the main endgame for Warframe, Sinclair hopes to incorporate incorporate something similar within the planes. The 8-team mission-based trials, according to Sinclair, would be great for other players to get a feel for, and he hopes to add more missions like that outside of the endgame. Planes of Eidolon was targeted towards veteran players. Rebecca Ford revealed that the Eidolons, monsters sent by the Sentients, can only be defeated if all narrative quests have been unlocked. The player must switch between Warrior mode, obtainable only after the quests are completed, and Warframe mode. Monster Hunter was a major source of inspiration for the Sentients. Sinclair wanted to capture the feel of Monster Hunter's multi-stage boss fights. The Sentients were added within the planes to address the limited endgame content available in Warframe. The planes themselves are an entirely new playground for new content. Speaking of the planes, Sinclair felt like the planes are a perfect place to expand. He knew players would comment with "open it up," and his team has every intention of doing so. Community coordinator Megan Everett said that the development of the planes went pretty quickly considering how massive it was. She's noted that the idea for the planes began during the Q1 stage of 2017, and the team was working non-stop leading up to the July 2017 demo reveal. The team was so dedicated to making the planes of Eidolon that Everett and other members would catch themselves yelling "pencils down" to catch a break. They even made changes to the demo just hours before the big reveal at TennoCon. Eidolon is a term of Greek origin, which means phantom or ghost. The planes themselves are meant to hint at what was there before, which resonates with the Greek meaning of Eidolon. Prior to this update, Warframe was comprised of a set of missions of varying complexity. The levels themselves were linear, but randomly generated in order to keep things fresh. However, the Planes of Eidolon added an all-new mode. The team had thought about making Planes of Eidolon procedurally generated as well, but they felt that it wouldn't work well in an open world. So the team had to rework their entire game engine to make sure that everything felt authentic and unique within the planes. While the map itself is not procedurally generated, the encounters within the planes are. The team wanted the world itself to always feel familiar, but for players' experiences to be different. Within the early stages of developing the Planes of Eidolon, the team wanted the world to feel open. Sinclair noted that prior to the planes, the majority of Warframe felt like, quote, a rat in a maze. Aside from the wildlife, planes introduced an all-new civilization as well. Prior to the expansion, Sinclair felt that really the only people on the other side of the gun were enemies, and he wanted to add an actual colony to interact and trade with. The Codex scanner enables players to scan and obtain data on enemies. It's an encyclopedia of the lore of all the characters encountered. The Helios blueprint can be built or bought to automatically scan enemies, which may be harder to target. There are about 3 hotfixes or updates applied to the game per week. During October 2012 and September 2014, there were over 279 hotfixes and updates. 2 weeks of no updates or hotfixes have proven to be disastrous for the game. In 2014, a major issue arose with the Eyes of Blight in between update 15.8.1 and 15.9, in which all the leaderboards were erased. In November 2013, when Warframe launched on PlayStation 4, Sony's system prevented Digital Extremes from updating and hotfixing as quickly as they would have. A year later, when launching with the Xbox One, they ensured their control over updates by being cautious in the certification process. On average, the developers release a new Warframe once every 3 months. The exceptions are the Prime variants and Frost and Nyx, which took about 100 days to launch in Update 6. The developers have made a point to feature a new weapon for every Warframe every 14 days. They've made good on this promise for the last 4 years and counting. Developers have also made many sub-updates, including the Silver Grove, the Islands of Inaros, and Spectres of the Rail in 2016. Parkour 2.0 allowed for an entirely new set of movement within the game. There were so many added techniques that an all-new tutorial was added within the game just to teach players the new moves. Parkour! With the Parkour 2.0 update, the developers integrated a vast amount of movements. Among these are the double jump, the aim glide, the bullet jump, and the rocket jump, the wall jump, the melee strike, as well as other combinations such as sprint rocket, barrel roll, drop canceling, falling bullet jump, rocket dash, rolling jump, and enemy bounce. Parkour! One of the most notable mechanics within the game is the ability to run against walls, something not many other combat games do. It gives the game a more enhanced, dexterous feel. If having sweet parkour abilities wasn't enough, then the next coolest thing is adding flying space ninjas. Update 15 did just that. In Update 15, an entirely new mechanic called Archwing was introduced, which added an augmentation to your Warframe, giving you the ability to fly in space. When the update was being made, the development team wanted the Archwing system to feel as animated anime-like as possible, which of course meant having a giant sword that could cut through spaceships. The development process for the Archwing was designed to stay true to the already established modes within Warframe. The only difference was that you'd be fighting in space, which already made everything 1,000 times cooler. Movement within the Archwing was meant to feel familiar as well. Sinclair never wanted players to feel as though they lost their muscle memory. The majority of the movement control stayed the same, but the movement itself was adjusted for space. The team did experiment with some of the movement for Archwing, and that's a good thing they did. In testing, they noticed the ability to move up in any direction felt vomit-inducing, and could make players feel disoriented in combat. So they went with a predetermined up motion instead. At launch, there were only 8 Warframes available: Excalibur, Mag, Vault, Loki, Ash, Ember, Rhino, and Trinity. Since launch, there have been 44 Warframes added within the game, including Prime Warframes. At this rate, it seems there's no slowing down for Digital Extremes. In terms of major updates, Warframe has seen 22 of them since launch, and each major update has included a new Warframe as well. While a bunch of Warframes have been released since launch, the developers always made sure each one had a purpose and felt balanced rather than rushing them out. Sinclair felt that combat should be freeform, and each new Warframe should allow players to expand upon and improvise on their strategies. Many of the voices for the Warframes were not provided by professional actors. George Spano thought it was more convenient to modulate the voices of studio employees. Level designer Cole Crosby is the voice of Vor, and community manager Rebecca Ford is the voice of Lotus. Megan Everett is the community coordinator who often streams on the Warframe Primetime's broadcast. She also voices the cries of the Valkyr. Warframe has a channel on Twitch that features dev streams hosted by Rebecca. The team discusses all things Warframe, from skins to upcoming features. If you missed it, you can review it on their YouTube channel, Play Warframe. Their YouTube channel, Play Warframe, has over 100 episodes plus the primetime broadcasts. Musical composer Keith Power, recognized for his work on Age of Ultron, Criminal, and Hawaii Five-0, collaborated with Warframe's audio director George Spanos to score Warframe's digital soundtracks. There are 24 tracks in the album, which was released this July. The theme song for Warframe is called This Is What You Are. You can listen to it on the Warframe playlist in Spotify, which includes an exclusive mix of inspirations and favorite songs by the developers themselves. Though Warframe is primarily a shooter game, it's loaded with a variety of melee weapons. In a Forbes magazine article, writer Paul Tassi praises the availability of swords, machetes, katanas, fist weapons, daggers, hammers, axes, and other weapons made available in the 3rd slot of Warframe, which is absent from other popular shooters such as Destiny. Not only that, but Warframe has an extensive modding system for each weapon and Warframe. Almost every type of customization for a weapon or armor set is possible within Warframe and could meet every type of player's needs. All of Warframe's weapons are unique despite the fact that there are hundreds upon hundreds within the game. None of the weapons are reskins or slightly different versions of another weapon. Each weapon has its own look and feel. In a 2016 interview, studio head Shelton Carter said that if he could have foreseen their success with Warframe, the team would have worked on improving the weaponry's damage system. However, their main concern is to not lose players who might have invested in mods and gear to create such weapons. Fast facts time here. There's a secret minigame available on the PC version of Warframe. If you enter the account name Flappy and the password Bird, you can play Flappy Bird. Another Easter egg is Wormius, a side-scrolling minigame players can access by selecting an equipping worm and then tapping the W at the top of the screen. There are Orican cat statues hidden in different parts of the game. They're found in the least visible places like ledges. It is unknown what their purpose is in-game, what they unlock, or how many there are. The roots of Orican are made up of 2 words: Oro, which is the Spanish and Latin root for the word gold, and kin, which translates to family. Put together, this symbolizes the high rank of the noble and rare Orican lifeline. When loitering on the ship, players can turn their scanner to hear an outraged security officer yelling about expired passports and threatening to shoot people. This is presumably a reference to the indie video game called Papers, Please, which players are tasked with checking identification. Warframe has its very own fan convention, hosted by Digital Extremes, known as TennoCon. The second TennoCon was held in London, Ontario in 2017, with over 2,000 attendees who traveled from 34 different countries to experience the panels, workshops, escape room cosplay, and live Twitch stream with gameplay of Plains of Eidolon. The Hydroid Prime Warframe was announced at the 2017 TennoCon art panel. Just as the name suggests, players will be able to use water as a weapon by sending its enemies down to an undersea grave. Its weapons will be the badass Ballistica Prime, which can reanimate dead enemies, and a cutlass sword, known better as Nami Skyla. As early as 2008, Digital Extreme Studio head Sheldon Carter had worked with comic writer Matt Hawkins to create comic art on Dark Sector and The Darkness 2. Carter has talked about the inclusion of different timelines, which he feels will add clarity to Warframe's story. In October of 2017, 2015, a comic based on the video game was released. Comic writers Matt Hawkins, known for Sam Radin and The Tithe, and Ryan Cady, known for Magdalena, collaborated to, quote, explain the lore in a way that will satisfy longtime fans, as well as convert readers into players. They worked closely with Steve Sinclair in order to remain faithful to the original story. Sinclair was also involved in the process of getting the comic book series created, and wanted to make sure it felt as authentic as possible to the Warframe world. The first issue's cover was actually drawn by a fan of Warframe, Kevin Glint, who has done a massive amount of fan art for the Warframe series. The illustrations for Warframe's comics are produced by Studio Hive. Stylistically, their previous comic art in Bushido, The Way of the Warrior, and the book Son of Merlin is similar to the game. The comic's 5 issues will be released as a first volume collected edition in April of next year. When asked if there would be a hidden surprise inside of the comic book collection, writer Ryan Cady revealed that there was an in-game currency coupon inside the first issue. In October of 2016, a couple by the names of Niti and Eli from the Xbox One clan Midgard held their wedding within Warframe because many of their loved ones were players they met while playing the game. This wedding was even approved by Digital Extremes themselves. In 2015, Warframe received an award from the MMO Reader's Choice Awards for Best Community, Best Expansion, and Favorite Action MMO. By Warframe's 4th year, the game's population grew to nearly 30 million registered players, with 93,466 years worth of playtime invested. Symbiote Studios bought the rights to manufacture Warframe action figures. The CEO of Symbiote Studios, Joseph Reiter, predicts Warframe is the future of gaming. Mag, Nyx, Rhino, and Excalibur action figures can be ordered and purchased for $80 through the online store section in Warframe's main site. Well, that's everything. Once again, I'm Brendan with the Leaderboard. Thanks for watching 107 facts about Warframe. Are you one of those 30 million registered users? What's your favorite weapon mod? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad, and if you like getting more from your games, subscribe to the Leaderboard, your home for video game fact.